You cannot experience the deepest, most profound, extraordinary, one of a kind love with your spouse if you're not willing to take 100% accountability.
Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast, a space dedicated to one belief that you have the power within to create everything you seek. So if you are ready to step into a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with me. I'm your host, Rudi Riekstins, and this is the Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. I'm your host, and I'm joined by Anniston Riekstins today, my wife, and also my partner in a recent retreat and mastermind that we had hosted alongside Brooke and Thomas Hemingway. Today on the podcast, we really want to share with you what have been some of the takeaways that we have taken from this incredible experience of guiding 7 couples back to the most beautiful parts of their relationship and then expanding other areas of their relationship that they had yet to tap into and where the miracles came in between. And we also want to touch on some of the things that we are most surprised about. I recently spoke at an event which was 350 women. There were only 3 men in the room. I told a story from stage of how Anniston and I met and started the story of how, as a little boy, my earliest, youngest memory was getting on my hands and knees and praying to God, can I please meet my wife tomorrow? Because I was so ready for this deep level committed love. And I have received literally hundreds of emails, messages, or DMs from attendees in the room just saying, my heart yearns to have that level of love. And this is what was promised at the end of our mastermind and retreat. And I'm just beyond excited that that is what we were able to support these couples in opening the door to have that. Because again, it is just the opening. And so today, Annis and I thought we would have a podcast episode where we would just casually share what were some of our biggest takeaways, what were some of the surprises, what were some of the things we loved. And hopefully it is going to spark something within you that not only shows you what's possible, but maybe reminds you that you're worthy of having what is on the other side of this conversation. So, Anniston, thank you so much for joining me again on the Empowered Life podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. As soon as Rudy and I left the couples retreat, I turned to him and I was like, we have to do a podcast. We have to do a podcast on the takeaways, not only to share with our communities, because we believe that that is our responsibility as teachers and embodied way showers, but also to anchor. I really wanted to anchor what it is that we took away from this. Because I can tell you, it's so easy to project in your mind what people are ready for, what they're not ready for, to create judgments of what kind of couple would be ready to go through something like this and what kind of couple wouldn't be ready. And I hear as a woman and serving women, one of the things I often hear from my clients or my community is, I really wish my partner was more aligned with me in my growth. Or I really wish I could talk about all the things that I'm learning and how I'm growing with my partner and they actually wanted to know about it. Or I really wish my partner was more open minded and vulnerable. And here's what I want to tell you, ladies. I think your men are more ready than you know. And we're going to get into that today. And that's not the only thing we're going to talk about, but I'm just excited to have this conversation. So, where do you want to kick off?
I would actually love for you to start today with a little bit about what were some of those takeaways that you took away from the experience, but through the lens of how you just set this up. And that is, what was your expectation
Mhm.
of the readiness and the availability, meaning emotional availability of the men that came along with this journey, going through a 4-month mastermind with a call every single week for an hour and a half, diving deeper and deeper into all aspects of their relationship, how they show up as an individual, how they then show up as a partner, what their standards are, their expectations, and then eventually getting into things like intimacy and sex and love and expansion.
Mhm.
What did you as a woman think was going to be the experience of the men? And then what actually unfolded?
I'm laughing because I mean, I spend a lot of my time in ballrooms and in masterminds and in spaces where people are gathering to learn. And all it takes is a set of eyeballs to look around and see that 99% of the people that are in those rooms, at least up until this point, the rooms that I've been in anyway, have been women. And so when we came together and really felt called alongside Brooke and Thomas to create this couples mastermind, something, by the way, that many women and men had actually asked us about in the past. Hey, do you do couples counseling? Do you have a couples program? Because Rudy and I, we show up so frequently in a partnership and as a couple, and it's something we are so proud of is our marriage. When we began this 4-week journey, which, as you said, we're one Zoom call a week for 16 weeks, we made it very clear that every couple was expected to be on those calls and expected to be present. But we don't just teach in theory, we teach through experience. So for every training, there was, yes, an idea, and yes, a sharing of stories, and yes, speaking about the what, why, but then also the how. And then they would get homework. And so something that surprised me was how these men took it so seriously. I thought for sure, I mean, when we positioned this, when we were planning this mastermind, we very intentionally planned the retreat at the very end. And we very intentionally planned the real juicy content. And I'm talking about sex and intimacy at the very end. And the reason for that is because we knew that if we went straight for that, they wouldn't transform. It would be rewarding, maybe a little exciting, but the real work has to happen first. The awareness has to happen first. And that was what I was a little concerned about. Will they be able to go there? Will they be willing to go there? I mean, the first assignment, and I'm not going to give away, we're not giving away too much because we love to keep things in secret. But one of the first assignments was filming a video and sharing some of your more vulnerable moments with all of the couples on a WhatsApp group. And I thought for sure, I was like, these guys are really going to struggle with this. I don't know. And you know what? They went for it. They went all in.
I want to preface because there's somebody listening to this that just heard that and said, well, there you go, right there. My husband would never do that. Or maybe there's a guy listening to this and he's thinking, there is no way on God's green earth that I am going to put myself willingly into a room where Rudy on the first call is going to encourage that I share something, a vulnerability, have this moment and talk about something that would otherwise be a thing pushed into a little shoebox and hidden in a storage closet somewhere in your mind. It sounds so much scarier than what it is. But the greatest takeaway that I took from this was not that men are so unwilling to be vulnerable. And I want you to lean in and listen to this. It's that men are desperate for a safe space to be willing.
Mhm.
And that is my single greatest takeaway. When Anniston says that we're in a lot of conference rooms, ball rooms, in addition, speaking engagement events, masterminds, etc., it is mostly women. And when it is a business formatted mastermind, then sure, then there's 90% men there. And it's all about build and grow and make money. And so the moment we talk about self development, personal growth, spirituality, it does tend more to a female audience. And so when we're talking about a relationship grounded in sacred union, which is what this was, a spiritual connection between two people coming together to create this incredible, harmonious, dare I say, explosively passionate relationship, well, that's going to require something that most men aren't in most circles ready or open or willing to bring. And when we put this forward, we thought, let's see what it looks like. And we did a very soft market, very soft launch. We were not looking to put 50 people into a room. We were looking for 4, 5, 6 couples. We ended up going through a journey with 7 couples. And here's what is so amazing about this. It showed me that the men are not in these rooms because they don't feel that these rooms are safe. And the men that are in the rooms, they don't need to be encouraged, motivated. They're ready and they're open and they're willing. When I asked the room to share. And I had done an hour and a half training just speaking into how the past creates conditionings, and that when you really think about some of these experiences, they show up in your marriage. And when you look at something that happens in the past and you tie it to what is currently coming up in your marriage, there's a line, it's the same pattern, same theme, and you can work through it. And I said, now I want you to go in and share this. It was the men that shared first. When we hosted the in person retreat and we were sitting in a living room together, 7 couples plus the 2 couples, Aniston and myself and Brooke and Thomas as the facilitators, 9 couples sitting in a room. All these men, strangers to each other, and for the most part to themselves and to their partners, because they began to open up in a way that they'd never done before.
Mhm.
And what I want everybody to walk away with is that the first person to actually cry in the room was a man. The second person to cry in the room was a man. The third person to cry in the room was also a man. And if you're listening to this, I don't want you to think that we created a sub story environment where everybody was emotional. No, I'm talking about men have had this high level of built up emotion that they have pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. And we barely touched the surface, and they allowed themselves to open and unfold. And so there's 2 things I want you to hear here. One is that, what does your relationship look like when you have these vulnerabilities that have opened, you allow your partner to see you and you see your partner and you come together closer, more intimately, deeper connection. But in addition to that, what if you don't work through that emotion that's sitting on the surface? It means at one point in time in the very near future, had those men not had that moment, they will explode, and it will be in a tantrum. It'll be in a fit of rage. It will be in this built up, pent up, I'm going to lose everything and blow everything up, because that's now dealing in the heightened levels of emotion. And we saw the most beautiful shifts and changes because the men were actually so ready to go there. And every single couple had tears, had moments of joy, had laughing, crying. I was not expecting to see that level of vulnerability so soon and so deep. And
Mhm.
then the transformation so soon after.
Yeah. Just as a recap, number one takeaway is, ladies, if you're listening to this, don't assume what you know your husband has capacity for. And what we realized is very quickly, and I think what everyone realized was, number one, we're all human. We're all spiritual beings having a human experience. Emotion is a part of the human experience. What is not natural to the human experience is to not allow yourself to feel. And so, something else that I really took away from witnessing this, and I've also just knowing in our own experience in our marriage, is that you cannot experience the deepest, most profound, extraordinary, one of a kind love with your spouse if you're not willing to take 100% accountability. And we had 16 weeks of trainings, and every single training, it always brought it back to self awareness. What is your outer reality reflecting back at you? How are you and your partner playing this game and this dance of triggering each other to help each other's growth? Basically, helping people shift their lens to look at their partner not just as this person they were attracted to and fell in love with and decided to have kids with and whatever, but as a soul contract, as someone who was beautifully designed to support you in your growth and evolution. And that doesn't mean it's always easy. Oftentimes, that means it's really challenging. And they're the person who challenge you the most. And simultaneously, your partner is there to do the same thing as a mirror. And so, as we saw these couples start to shift their perspective into that, it was so much easier for them then to catch themselves in the moment of a trigger or in the moment of a reaction and be like, oh my gosh, I just went unconscious again. I'm reacting to something, thinking you're doing something to me. You're making me feel a certain way, when in all actuality, it's me. It's always been me. And to see that transformation over the course of 16 weeks, and especially when we all got together, was really beautiful and profound and helped me even deepen my understanding, I think, of that truth within my marriage with Rudy. And so, yeah, that was a huge takeaway for me.
I love that you shared that because the most profound feedback that we got from the retreat was a session that we did where we reminded everybody that this journey of life experience is not just a bunch of accidental moments where you just happen to be in the right or the wrong place at a certain time, but instead a divinely orchestrated bunch of synchronistic events that have led you to the very moment that you're at. Aniston used the terminology soul contract a moment ago, and that is the work that she does and she brings into the world. It is transformational because it is like somebody seeing into your soul, reading your inner thoughts and your deepest, darkest knowings of who you are. And it's the greatest form of remembrance when somebody gets to hear this because it's not a psychic reading. It's based on who you are, your numbers, your birth date, etc. And we took the conversation a little bit deeper than that. And we reminded every couple before you were born, you sat at a table with your creator and you agreed to a lifetime of what you wanted to learn, who you wanted to become, how you wanted to be challenged. And in the end, you had this ideal vision of if and should you work through all of these life lessons, opportunities to evolve and expand and to shift your perspective, you would reach a certain status of beingness, knowingness, remembrance, and that you then agreed alongside your creator who would be the characters that will play a very specific role in your life. And so the relationships, the partnerships, the experiences, every single one of them add up to the collective of who you've become. Aniston has shared on the podcast. She shared on her own podcast, the Anniston Riekstins show. She shared beautifully and boldly in this space that she had a experience when she was 16 years old that no one would ever wish for. And somebody was forcibly putting her in a very difficult sexual experience. And instead of looking at that as a victim to situation and circumstance, she's able to look at that and say, well, what was the lesson? Why would I, as a soul, choose this person, this experience, and what would the gift be in that? And then bring that into all aspects of her life, all the way that leads into this beautiful, equal exchange of love and energy in her relationship with her husband, me, today. And we shared this with this group that their partner is not just, as Aniston alluded to, oh, someone you met and you found attractive and then, well, you had a baby and now you're in it. No, this was a divine contract that you literally signed a contract in heaven with God to meet this person, to trigger this person, to mirror back to them who they are. We use words on the podcast all the time, and it goes over so many people's heads. And that is that Aniston mirrors back to me who I am. She sees me, reflects back to me, calls me lovingly forward, pushes me, guides me. I would not be who I am today if it would not be for her. I believe that when we agreed, she would play a certain role in my life so I could remember who I am. Your partner is doing the same thing for you right now. And all of a sudden, these couples looked at each other, and every one of the 7 couples that came to this event, every one of them, they were in great relationships or okay relationships, or they were just in mutually co inhabited spaces. But all of a sudden, they stopped, turned to each other, and we could see one by one as they started to realize there was something very intentional about this relationship and that there was an opportunity that they could learn from that person or they could leave them. One of the couples hadn't been intimate for 5 years. There was a conscious choice. I could leave this person and create exactly the same situation in my next relationship because there's a lesson. And if I don't learn it, I signed a contract with a backup. And if I don't learn the lesson with them, there's a contract with another backup. And now these couples turn to each other. And instead of looking them as, oh, you've done something or you've said something or I've harbored resentment, it all of a sudden opened up a whole new level of conversation.
I want to say something too about what you just shared about how I'm a mirror for you and you're a mirror for me. And I want to make this really, really clear to everyone. What Rudy is saying is not that I don't trigger him or that he doesn't trigger me. Because guess what? We're human. Of course, we have our wounds, we have all of our things, right? The difference is, and this is what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes, the difference is we have become so adept at catching ourselves and then taking full accountability. So I'm still experiencing the trigger. I'm still having that moment and then I'm like, what am I making this mean? What am I making what he just said mean? And there's so much information there. And so we use those opportunities, those triggers as content for our own personal transformation instead of looking at my partner like a punching bag. It's not Rudy's fault that I am triggered because he said something in a specific tone. I'm making it mean something. And what I'm making it mean is pointing directly to a wound that still needs a little attention from me. And that's the way we are able to move through things so quickly. It's why you've probably heard Rudy say so many times, we've never had a fight. I don't know what it is. We got this down pretty early in our marriage, and it has allowed us to grow and evolve and to deepen. Even when we are triggering each other, somehow or another, those triggers seem to deepen our relationship, not create breaks in our relationship. And so, what I also want to say is that and, you might be thinking like, why is it so important to have this level of vulnerability with your partner? And how is that associated with intimacy? Well, let me tell you, it's everything. It is the cornerstone, the foundation of intimacy. Because in order to have true intimacy, meaning like the best sex of your life, I'm just going to say it, and for it to continue to get better and better and better, there has to be 100% safety. And when you are hiding something, or don't feel safe to be fully honest with your partner about anything, not just intimacy, but anything. You're bringing that with you into the marriage bed, and it creates these blocks in your ability to connect, and the other person can sense it, which can create distrust. And then if the other person's hiding things like that it's fear, right? When we're hiding something, it's because we fear that in being transparent with our partner that we will lose something. Respect, love, adoration, our marriage, whatever that is. But what you don't see is the cost. And so that piece cannot be skipped. Is it the most fun? Absolutely not, but it's the most rewarding. And I saw women looking into their husband's eyes as if they were seeing them for the first time. I'm all chill bumpy right now. Like literally, that was a moment for me. I was like, she is seeing him for the first time because he's allowing her to. And vice versa, by the way. I know we're talking a lot about the men and how maybe we're not used to seeing men as open, but there were a lot of things that these women shared with their husbands that they had never had a conversation about, ever. They had never vocalized. And in having one conversation after another, and we layered it so that they could start getting comfortable with it, they started feeling like, okay, we had the conversation, we said the thing, the sky didn't fall, everything was okay, and now somehow we feel more connected. And so to me, it was such a good reminder that you cannot skip the work, but the work is always individual. And so we had 16 individuals going through this program alongside their partner. But make no mistake, this was a very much an individual journey. And the reward was in doing it alongside your partner, you expand and grow together.
One of the greatest takeaways for me came as my own lesson within this. Now, to be very, very clear, I have arguably the greatest love relationship on the history of the planet. And we have done so much work in our relationship. And was it always easy? No. Have there been challenging, triggering, painful times? Absolutely. But we have done the work. And we are more loving, whole, and healed than we are anything else. And that to me is my greatest, greatest reward. And here we are hosting and facilitating a relationship on love. And we have been asked probably for about 8, 9 years now, would you please host a relationship event of some kind? And I never felt ready until now. And it wasn't that our relationship wasn't ready. I felt like, well, I needed to achieve a certain level of something in being a teacher and being able to share. And there were areas of my relationship I wasn't ready to share yet. And I didn't want to outwardly talk about sex. I was like, that's a private thing. And we'll talk about sex in a little bit. But the greatest takeaway that I really had was there's always another level.
Mhm.
Now, I alluded to a moment ago, we had a couple in the room that had not been intimate consistently. They were in a sexless marriage, which is once or twice a year, and that's about it, for 5 years. And it was more of a chore than it was this exciting thing that brought them together. It's like well, let's just get this over with approach. We had some couples that were intimate, but they were missing some of the connection. And then we had a couple that was very resentful and was harboring a lot of emotion based on past conversations that had happened or some that never happened at all. And then we had a couple that is just newly finding themselves. And they were by far the shiny penny in the room as far as the couples because they were always holding, always touching. They were committed to the work, to showing up and to exploring and to diving in and constantly taking notes and applying and practicing. So here I was in the room, the facilitator of this event, alongside my wife and another couple, and we have this trigger breakdown. Anison and I hosted a training where we split the group, men go into one room with me, the woman went into a group with Aniston, and we taught them a very intimate, beautiful, powerful sexual act of worshiping your partner. And it was this most eye-opening, and the men were leaning in and the women were leaning in, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, what? Wow, like that's real, that can happen, we can experience that." And then at the end of it, I had this emotion that came up in me around my relationship, as if while I was teaching, there was a part of me that wasn't in my integrity. Because I was like, I'm teaching all of this and we live this, we practice this. And there's an aspect that I haven't fully worked through. And so we finished the training and Anderson's like, "Whoa, how was yours? How did the men receive it?" And I'm like, "I don't know. How was like, great. How was yours?" And she's like, "Great." And she goes, "What's wrong?" Because she can sense there's something. I'm like, "No, no, I'm good." An hour later, she's like, "Let's go for a walk." And we're walking. She says, "You want to tell me what's on your mind?" And I'm like, "No, no, nothing. I'm good. So there's something. I just don't know. I'm lamenting." And then about 10 minutes later, like verbal diarrhea, da, 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 and I just start sharing. And we, in that moment, had another breakthrough. And the reason I share this with you is because, as the facilitators, the people that have curated every moment, every little topic, every training, every exercise, these couples are coming together closer and closer. It was like a hurricane of just beauty and then eventually passion that brought them together. And it was happening to us as well. And
Mhm.
no matter what level you are at, you can always expand into more love, more joy, more fulfillment, more freedom, and yes, more passion. And that was one of my greatest takeaways. So we shared this. I didn't. Aniston did the next morning. She said, I want you to know, as you've been going through your moments and your triggers and the do I push or pull away and then you come together again. She's like, we had one last night. 15 years of marriage, never had a fight, and I sensed something was wrong. And so we went for a walk. I asked him, he said nothing. I asked him again, and he eventually opened up. And it's been a little pebble in our shoe our entire marriage. And in an instant, we worked through it. It was the greatest gift that we don't think would have come any other time. And then the facilitating couple with us, Brooke and Thomas Hemingway, they said, well, actually, we had our own breakthrough last night as well. And that to me was the brilliance of this is because every couple had that. I want to finish this before we move on to another topic with this story. I did a training on the third morning, an hour-long training where at the end, each couple needed to just say one word to their partner of what they were committing to being in the relationship moving forward. Not a long, drawn out speech, a single, intentional thought, a commitment, a promise, a do over. And every couple, when they turned to each other and had to vocalize this one singular word, everyone was crying.
Mhm.
They were looking at their partners. Most of them had a hand on their face, or they were holding hands, or a hand on their heart. They would say their one word with trembling mouths, with the bated breath, with the heavy breathing, feeling the weight of this commitment, with the eagerness, with the excitement. And we were supposed to only give one word and then sit in silence. And every single couple just chatted and chatted and chatted, and they were whispering into each other's ears, and they looked like horny little teenagers in a living room with everybody as they were just like whispering and whispering. And I was like, this is the most magical thing because, for one, they didn't listen to anything I had instructed as part of the closing of the exercise because they got lost in themselves. And it didn't happen to just the couple that came into the room as the shiny little pennies, eager and excited to learn. It was everybody. It was every couple. And the most, I want to say, the cutest, most loving, affectionate couple in that entire room was the couple that had not been intimate for 5 years.
Mhm.
And they looked like they were in love little teenagers, giggling. When we finished the session, they said, "Are we done?" Okay, good. They held hands and walked out the room and went to their bedroom. God knows to do what, but I can only hope. It was the most brilliant, brilliant tip of the hat, if you will, to what does it look like when you allow yourself to have this level of intimacy, to welcome the triggers, the pain, the breakthroughs, to actually work to bring you closer together.
Mhm. Yeah, it was beautiful. It was so beautiful to see just even just the difference in the couple of days and to be able to witness that as the observer. But to Rudy's point, when you're a teacher, I think we believe it is so important to be in your integrity and to teach from embodiment. Not to teach from up here, from your head, from that cool thing you read, but you've never actually done in your relationship or you've never actually done yourself, but to actually teach what has worked for you. And this has been something that Rudy and I struggled with for a while when we were coming into our own as teachers is this feeling like, oh, well, what if I don't know enough? What if the way that's worked for us isn't good enough or won't work for other people? And what we've come to understand is that people are drawn to you for a reason. And your only job is to show up with an open heart, an open mind, and to share honestly your authentic experience, what has worked for you, knowing that there is no one way. But the only way to be, in my opinion, to be a teacher and to teach and to effectively transform others is to take full accountability yourself, but also just to share. And so when we went into different groups and I was with the women and Brooke was there, and obviously Rudy and Thomas went off with the men, and we were teaching this pleasure practice, let me tell you, like, I, for so many years, would tell Rudy, I'm like, I am totally fine with teaching anything. I will share anything. Please, God, do not make me me start sharing as it relates to, as Rudy said, what we feel is private, right? It's intimacy. It's our intimacy, but it has radically changed our sex life. It has radically changed our overall connection. And we have shown up and shared in different podcast episodes. If you go back through the Empowered Life podcast, you'll definitely see some of them, some of the things that we have tried and has worked really, really well for us to just to deepen that intimacy, to keep the passion going, and to let that part of our marriage continue to flourish. And sharing that with women who I know are at different points and have different beliefs and are coming from different places, but to be received in such a way where they were so grateful. They were like, "Thank you for being willing to share this thing that works really well for you, and, like, thank you for being willing." And so that was a moment for me as well as, I know we have a lot of coaches and teachers and healers and people that listen to this podcast that, again, judge what people are ready for based on what you see on paper, right? Based on, "Oh, well, they go to this church or they fundamentally believe this or da 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 da." And you know what? Just you do you. That's what I learned is you do you and you show up and they will get exactly what they need. And then the one other thing I want to say before we wrap this up, having everyone come together as couples away from their kids, away from their roles, and to come and to put themselves into situations where they are doing something different together. was the ignition switch, I think. So Rudy and I and Brooke and Thomas share a love for adventure. We love nature. We love to get outside, but we wanted to plan some experiences that would challenge them. That would be something that maybe would trigger some fears, would be something that would get some adrenaline going, and to have them have that experience, kind of like when you're young and you're dating and everything is new, and to show them how easy it is to actually curate that in your marriage with intention, right? With having the intention of, hey, let's try a new hobby. Let's learn something new together. They looked like kids again. They were glowing differently after getting in this. We said, how about a cold plunge and an ice cold waterfall? And how about a seaplane? And we had several, those that were joining, that had a fear of flying and they were petrified. But that was the moment, right? That was their moment where they had this massive aha and they got to do it alongside their partner. And so it was really cool to be a part of that and to see, like, fun sometimes looks like it's something that is extra. It's a bonus if you have the ability to do fun things or travel or whatever with your partner. I don't think it's a bonus. I actually think it's necessary. It's 100% fundamentally necessary because it leads to joy. Joy leads to a higher vibration and more heart coherence and not being so reactionary. It should be a number one strategy, in my opinion.
We are closing today's episode talking a little bit about pleasure. And Aniston alluded to a pleasure practice exercise that we taught. And a little bit before that, I mentioned the men went into a room and the ladies went into a room, and we gave them a step by step process of how to worship, love, and curate a moment for their partner. We also mentioned at the very beginning of this episode that in order for you to be intimate, there needs to be an opening of the heart. There needs to be a safe space. We created an environment where each couple privately, this is very important that it was privately, they were able to open themselves, their hearts, and ultimately their legs to have and to receive a pleasure practice where their partner gave them a pleasure massage for over an hour each, with a step by step process of how to absolutely adore every inch of them, to make them feel desired, for them to feel sensation and pleasure that they had never felt before. It was a stepping stone of one night receiving feathers to play with, and then the next night was something different. And it was this beautiful, subtle, not kinky, subtle, romantic gestures. And the takeaway that I have from this is that so many of the couples inside this container had never blindfolded their partner before or been blindfolded themselves. They'd never played with a feather and only a feather just for the sole purpose of feeling touch and sensation. None of them had ever had a pleasure practice where they were the receiver of an hour-long massage. And I'm talking about the most beautiful, intimate moment that you could have with your partner is giving them just an hour of absolute exhilarating pleasure for the sake of pleasure, for the sake of love making, because that's what it is. And when we brought this practice in, I actually came to Brooke and Thomas and Aniston right before and said, we're not teaching this thing. And I think we are failing the group if we don't. And here's why. Because a week before that, I had gone on a mastermind where I was hanging out for an entire week with 16 high profile business personalities. And these are very successful men who have achieved tremendous success in life and in business. All of them in really good, loving, committed relationships, varying degrees of intimacy. And I had mentioned one time, not even a pitch, a promotion, because I don't teach this stuff. Have I done it? Have I learned it? Do I practice it? Absolutely. Do we share it on the podcast? To a degree? Yes, but it is not a part of our curriculum, nor has it been an intention to. And in that moment, around a fire, one of the gentlemen mentioned we had a big bonfire and we were going around sharing where we have struggles in our life. And a gentleman mentioned something about intimacy and struggling to create this intimacy moment with his wife. And could the group give him any advice? And I just shared for just a moment, here's the quality of the relationship my wife and I have. Here's what's possible for you. And I mentioned that I'll give her an hour-long vaginal massage, or she will give me an hour-long penis massage. And here's what's interesting. The men didn't giggle at vagina penis. Oh my God, hee hee. They leaned in and they said, what? That's possible? Like, how do you do that? Do you have steps? And then privately, one by one, every single one of these gentlemen over the course of this week were like, dude, seriously, don't hold back on me. How do you do this? Where do you go? Who's the expert that you learned this from? Because they were hungry for the information, because they wanted an opportunity to give this to their wife. And when I met up with Anniston in Canada for this event, and Brooke and Thomas flew in, we all sat down in the living room and I said, I think we need to really go there. And they were like, hell yeah, we need to go there. And I had shared the story of these men and how hungry they were for this level of information. And so we very cautiously dipped our toe in the water. We were going to give them things, but it wasn't going to be like, okay, let's just pull back the curtain. Here's what you do. Step by step, do this, do this, do this. And then we left them and gave them 7 hours to go take themselves on a date, to go and have this beautiful romantic experience. And the next day, they were all sitting in the living room and giggling and cooing and cawing. And it was just the most incredible result because they learned how to be of service to their partner. They learned how to receive. And most couples, you know how to give, but you don't know how to receive. Or all you do is receive and you never give. And this was such a beautiful, equal exchange. And I am going to say this as cheesy as it sounds. God, I remember my mother saying this to me as a child, that it is greater to give a gift than it is to receive one. And I thought that's just something you say when you don't have any money, because we didn't have a whole lot. And so my mom would give us all the money that she could, all the gifts that she could, and there would be nothing for her. And then she said, oh, it's greater joy to give than it is to receive. And I was like, that's a load of nonsense. But when you are giving a gift to your partner that is that personal, that intimate, that safe, that to me is greater than the reward of receiving the reverse back. And that would be by far my ultimate takeaway from this experience.
Well, I know we'll be doing it again. And so for those of you that are listening and thinking, "Oh my gosh, like I need to know more." We will keep you guys posted for sure. But it taught us just as much as I feel like we were able to teach and impact the couples. And it reminded me that in every moment you have a choice. Every moment you can begin again. Truly. And we got to see that in real time. All it takes is a willingness to choose love over being right, a willingness to let go, to put it down, to forgive yourself, and to say, okay, reset, reset. And those couples got an opportunity to write vows as the person they are today and the person that they are committing to be in this marriage. And it was just so beautiful to see. What a gift.
What a gift, and a gift that you are worthy of giving to yourself, to your partner, and ultimately to your relationship. So, in the show notes, we're going to drop a wait list link so that you will be the first to hear about this as we launch the new one. We are already planning all of what we're going to do, how we can make it better, and curating a divine, sacred space for you and your partner. The relationship that you seek, whether it's through one of our events or through your own journey as Anniston and I navigated ours, it is there for you and you're worthy of it. We love you so very, very, very much. And I would love to hear from you. What was your greatest takeaway from this episode? And then I want to double dog dare you, as I love to in this podcast every single week, is to share this with your partner. Share this with your partner. One of the couples that was in the mastermind, they not only shared it with their partner, but their partner shared it with their best friend. And they ended up going through this together. And they created an opportunity for their best friend, the couple group, to also have this profound, great breakthrough. And you have that potential and that power in your hands right now. And the question is, what are you going to do with it? We love you, and I'll catch you in the next episode of the Empowered Life podcast. Till then, goodbye, everybody. If this episode gave you clarity, peace, or a perspective shift, hold on to that. And here is how you lock it in. Subscribe so that you keep building momentum week after week. And if you're the kind of person that believes a good message should travel, please leave a review. Reviews aren't just ratings. They're signals that help this reach the people who are ready for it. And then share this episode with somebody you love, someone you lead, or somebody that you were rooting for. Links are in the show notes so that you can connect with me online and on Instagram. Now go out there and take one beautiful, bold, and aligned step and make it count. I'm going to catch you on the next episode of the Empowered Life Podcast.